Einstein used to actually pick up cigarette butts off the street just to fill his pipe. And Pythagoras, he flat out refused to eat beans, like absolutely wouldn't touch them. History is literally full of brilliant minds who did things, well, a little differently. So have you ever caught yourself doing something kind of unusual, a little strange maybe, and thought, wait, is there something wrong with me? Well, welcome to today's Explainer because we are going to completely flip that script. What if being normal isn't actually the gold standard for being smart? In fact, many of the absolute most brilliant people throughout history were, let's face it, deeply quirky. Today, we're going to look at the fascinating psychology behind why those strange little habits of yours might actually be glowing indicators of a sharp, curious, and highly creative mind.
It's a question so many of us ask ourselves when we feel, just a little out of step with the people around us. We look at how we process the world, and it just feels different. But psychology actually backs up the idea that behaviors that seem odd on the surface often point directly to a highly functioning intellect. Okay, let's dive into this and reframe exactly what these behaviors really mean.
Here's how we're going to break it down today. First, we'll explore the quirky genius mind. Then we'll look at the always processing brain, followed by the unstoppable deep diver and the introverted observer. Finally, we'll wrap up by reevaluating what normal means.
So let's jump right into our first profile, the always processing brain.
This one is all about what happens when a mind simply refuses to idle, and it starts with a habit that might actually feel a little embarrassing. I mean, do you ever find yourself giving a full-on pep talk in the mirror, or maybe mumbling your to-do list, or having a completely dramatic argument with absolutely no one in the room? Well, psychologists call this self-directed speech, and it is actually a major sign of sharp thinking. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is that kids do this naturally as a way to learn and navigate the world. But highly intelligent adults retain this habit because it literally helps process complex ideas faster. It also helps regulate intense emotions. We're effectively offloading cognitive demand by speaking our thoughts aloud. So, it turns out rehearsing conversations out loud, yeah, that's just a highly efficient way of optimizing your brain's processing power.
And if you're someone who talks through problems out loud, you probably also experience something called unconscious problem solving. This ties into a super fascinating neurological reality. Unlike most people, highly intelligent brains rarely shut off, even at night. When we think we're resting, our brains are actually continuing to process, synthesize, and analyze information quietly in the background. In neuroscience, this is linked to something called the default mode network. That's the brain network that just lights up when we're daydreaming or resting. It proves that the brain is actually highly active, making these massive connections, precisely when it appears to be doing absolutely nothing.
And because of that constant background processing, you probably experience flashes of genius in the absolute most inconvenient places. Maybe your best ideas strike in the middle of a hot shower, or during a quiet walk, or right at 3 a.m. when literally the rest of the world is fast asleep. Research actually shows our brains can be more creative during these moments of distraction or rest than during periods of intense, focused effort. So honestly, don't ignore those late-night epiphanies. Even if you have to jump dripping wet out of the shower to write them down, that is just your subconscious doing its absolute best work.
Moving right along to our next profile, the unstoppable deep diver. This describes the highly curious, hyper-fixated mind that simply cannot let a fascinating topic go. You know the exact feeling, right? You meant to watch just one quick video, and suddenly you've spent 3 straight weeks doing absolutely nothing in your free time but learning the physics of black holes. Or maybe you suddenly had this overwhelming urge to master chess, dive into 18th century history, or read literally every single theory about the moon landing. This intense, deep dive behavior, that's exactly how a brilliantly curious brain actively engages with the world. It turns out psychologists actually connect this specific type of intense curiosity to a big 5 personality trait known as openness to experience. So the crucial point here is that these hyperfixations, they aren't mere distractions. They aren't a lack of focus. Actually, scratch that. It's the complete opposite. It is a profound engagement with reality. You see, we don't just enjoy learning about a new topic. We completely disappear into it. A highly intelligent mind tackles the world one intense rabbit hole at a time. And when you possess that level of openness, it naturally translates into asking incredibly deep and, well, sometimes weird questions that might frankly frustrate everyone else in the room. If you've ever been told that you think too much, take it as a massive compliment. A highly intelligent mind is simply not content with surface-level answers. We want to understand the mechanics of reality. We want to know why we dream, if time could be an illusion, or what actually sits just beyond the edge of the universe. And this habit carries some heavy historical weight too. Albert Einstein famously said, "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." Studies consistently show that curious people, those who continuously ask these unanswerable, weird questions, actually learn faster. They enjoy the process of learning more, and they perform better in academic and professional settings. This passion for the unanswerable isn't just a quirk. It is literally the core engine for our growth, discovery, and innovation.
Which leads us right into our next profile, the introverted observer.
Because look, while intense curiosity and constant processing are incredibly powerful tools, they can also lead to a distinct feeling of isolation. A lot of highly intelligent people feel like outsiders, especially early in life. With this heightened self-awareness, we start to notice patterns others miss, and we question things most people just blindly accept. And this brilliantly illustrates the famous philosophical allegory of Plato's cave. Imagine prisoners chained in a cave, only ever seeing shadows cast on a wall. To them, the shadows are the absolute entirety of reality. But if one escapes and sees the real, complex, sunlit world outside, they finally realize the truth. The problem arises when they return to the cave to tell the others. They get rejected, because people naturally resist new truths that challenge their comfortable illusions. Returning to the cave with those new truths can make absolutely anyone feel incredibly isolated. But we really have to reframe this. Yes, seeing the world differently can be a burden, but that burden is completely offset by the rare insight, the deep empathy, and the extraordinary perspective it grants you. You aren't broken for feeling like an outsider. You are simply observing a much broader reality.
And because of this intense observation, you probably also have long, deep, silent phases. You might suddenly crave just disappearing into your own head, pulling back from people or vanishing from social media for a little while. This isn't antisocial behavior at all. It's a profound sign of intrapersonal intelligence. While a lot of people actively avoid being alone, high-functioning minds actually crave solitude. You require uninterrupted space to think, reflect, and quietly connect all those dots you've been observing. Even when you look completely still on the outside, your mind is actively making meaning and sparking creativity right there in the background.
Finally, that brings us to re-evaluating what normal means. This brings us to the final part of our journey today, and it's all about stopping the judgment. It is time to stop viewing these behaviors through the lens of average expectations. Let's look at the full picture of what we've covered. Fast processing by talking to yourself, unconscious problem solving triggered by the default mode network, unstoppable curiosity that sends you down 3-week rabbit holes, and the deep interpersonal intelligence that demands quiet solitude. Now, to be clear, doing these things doesn't magically guarantee we're all certified geniuses. However, these quirks consistently show up in people who demonstrate incredibly high intellectual potential. They are the hallmarks of a mind that is alive and constantly searching for meaning.
So the very next time you catch yourself arguing out loud in an empty room or diving deep into the history of chess at midnight, please don't dismiss it. Don't ask what's wrong with you. Instead, ask yourself which of these misunderstood habits are actually revealing your own